Thanks for taking time today to listen to a Faciliflex Express discussion with several experts from AES and a couple of other panelists. And I think if each of us would introduce ourselves, and I'm going to move now to the display of the panelists. I'm Bob Mcllvaine of the Mcelveen Company, and we produce a number of publications relative to the cleanroom industry, including the coronavirus pharmaceutical solutions. And we're very interested to hear about the fast track standardized options that you've developed here at AES, not only because of the needs for therapies and vaccines to fight COVID, but also from the fact that cancer patients and others that contract COVID have very poor outcomes. And so a lot of the other therapies and gene and cell therapies that you're developing, that are developed with your fast track projects, can possibly save lives of those that contract COVID. And I'd like to ask Barry Garfinkle of Garfinkle Associates to give us a little of his background, which is very extensive in this industry.
Thank you, Bob. My name is Barry Garfinkle. I have a PhD in biochemical virology and spent a lot of my career at Merck & Company. At one point, I served as VP of Vaccine Quality for the world, and then went and became VP of Vaccine Technology and Engineering. And our mission in that role was to take a lab scale process from our research division and then essentially set up a commercialized process, including the unit operations for the process train, design the facility, start it up, and then provide any troubleshooting or efficiencies over time to improve the process.
Yeah, with all that wealth of knowledge, we're going to be very interested in some of the questions and comments that you have. And now I'd like to turn to the AES people, and maybe Mitch Gonzalez, Vice President of Process Technology, would introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Mitch Gonzalez. I've been in the biopharmaceutical industry for about 30 years in all forms of operational roles. I began my career at Amgen for about 16 years in engineering construction, designing and building fast-track GMP facilities, developing in the early days what was called interstitial space, in which AES, I think, has capitalized off of that concept. Much of my experience is directly in engineering with technical services, process development, contract manufacturing, as well as project management, leading these groups within those functions. I've worked for Merck as well in the sterols division, Novartis vaccines and diagnostics, as well as Baxter's and a couple other companies, including a gene therapy company. And I'm happy to be here and contribute.
Yes, and a depth of previous experience. I'd like now to turn to Josh Russel, who is, I think, going to take over from here. He's Vice President of Sales and Marketing. But Josh, give us a little bit of your background before you move on.
Absolutely, Bob, and thank you. My name is Bob had mentioned, Josh Russel. I'm currently the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for AES. I come from a 15-year background in aseptic manufacturing and drug product manufacturing, both from small-scale therapeutics to larger-scale bulk biologic manufacturing, and just excited to be here and talk a little bit more about this new product that AES has really come into the market to really alleviate some of the challenges that just industry has been having in general, as to being able to fast track and to deliver these cutting edge, high quality and life-changing therapeutics to the industry. And we call this particular product our Faciliflex Express. And some of the things that we generally see that we're trying to address with this particular product line is a lot of, just in terms of GMP construction projects, have a number of issues related or hurdles that these drug companies are continually trying to wrestle with and overcome. First and foremost, especially as it relates to many of these COVID vaccines, is Project Warp Speed. They want to go faster than Warp Speed. Really, they're asking a lot, and obviously the public safety and health is at risk here. So how do we bring generally a protracted capital construction project to market to get these products to patients quicker? And so having a set of proven standard facility options is obviously a great way to go. And then obviously in construction, there can oftentimes be hidden costs that really can below the budget, so to speak, on many occasions. There's a certain amount of funds that have put aside when you think you're a very young startup company with a very earth-shattering new type therapeutic. You don't oftentimes have a lot of deep pockets to bring those products to market and into reality. And so controlling costs, knowing costs, and controlling those budget risks becomes very, very critical. Certainly, when you build a clean room, you want something that stands the test of time, but also holds up to the GMP rigors of maintaining the facility and being able to ensure that that drug product that you're developing can be delivered safely to the patient repeatedly, every time. And then oftentimes, why do these facilities, when the products and the manufacturing technologies that are being employed to produce these products are the same, how do we just not redesign the wheel every time, but get away from the custom facility concept and build something that is tried and true and make it repeatable for multiple applications, multiple locations globally, and to be able to deploy those very, very efficiently. Certainly unknown outcomes. I mean, there's nothing worse than deploying a ton of capital and having a large amount of risk and not being able to basically have the outcomes that are desired up front of the project. And so having a more standard solution with known outcomes certainly obfuscates a tremendous amount of those unknown risks for the project. And then lastly, lacking flexibility. And this is really, I think, a unique feature of the AES system and also the standard facility designs, is that although they are standard, we have the inherent flexibility built into the design, not only from a process architecture standpoint, but because of the construction methods of our solution, our AES modular wall panel, we have the ability to adapt the standard design as something that might be more amiable to customers' particular process application needs. Okay. When we look at modular clean room systems, we certainly we like to use the analogy of a Lego building brick. And what we have is we have standard components and assemblies that are prefabricated composite assembly. And the unique thing is that the AES, because of our focus on modular clean rooms for the pharmaceutical, biotech, cell and gene therapy marketplace, regulated industry, that these components are built for the purpose. It's not some general building block that is tried to apply to a clean room operation. It is built for long-term, continual manufacturing of drug products and drug substance and other materials in the GMP space. And so everything is built for purpose. We like to say our system is installed, not constructed. So that has huge implications, right? We have trained installers that go out into the field, and all they do day in and day out is focus on execution speed, getting the clean room up and running, and maintaining the construction quality that's needed to turn over a facility quickly and efficiently. It also reduces headcount in the field. And so this is really important kind of in this COVID context today, right? Fewer people that you have in the field producing your facility the less likelihood that you could have a potential outbreak, micro outbreak within your construction teams and all the other trades working together in a small area. The fewer headcount, fewer people equates to broader safety and less risk to schedule delay on your project. And then lastly, the systems and capabilities of the modular construction allow a ceiling supported system. Allows us to get the ceiling done first, allow other trades up above for process piping, HVAC and ductwork, electrical work, data, telecom, things of that nature to be working up above us while we're working in parallel with them to build out the broader infrastructure below, walls, ceilings, doors, etc. And then lastly, the materials themselves meet the standard needs, both in terms of ASTM, ICC, IBC, to make sure that you have something that ultimately is compliant to codes for building materials, but also is a proven safe material for operators and personnel interacting with the clean room long term. So Mitch, anything you wanted to add as it relates to the modular clean room systems, maybe the advantages of those particular systems, maybe Barry, your experience with these particular components?
I think it's important to point out that these are parallel activities in terms of conventional construction would require site preparation activities and then post that installation or construction of walls and things of that nature. And just want to reemphasize that the second bullet, that is field installation versus not constructed. So these parallel activities are a huge benefit, but without sacrificing materials, these materials are fit for purpose. So it's just a win-win situation in terms of high quality components as well as speed and schedule, which are imperative.
Yeah, this is Barry, and I'll add a few things to that if I might. So another advantage is, in all likelihood, the COVID exercise is going to require multiple manufacturing facilities by each of these vaccine developers. And it's a great advantage, both in speed and design, that one can have multiple clean rooms in which to install the process trains and know that the performance of those HVAC systems will be the same, as well as the ability to reuse things like SOPs for cleaning and maintenance, etc., where one doesn't have to rewrite them specifically for each of the facilities. So again, that gives us a lot of advantages for time as well as costs.
Barry,
I want to develop on that a little bit for Barry in terms of the tech transfer package that is required to do these. So that is a really great point, Barry, because those tech transfer documents will enable not only through the SOPs, but through the training and the startup and the commissioning of not only the facility, but the pre-validation work that happens. So that is very critical, that those activities can get stacked on top and start being done in parallel using similar staff and transitioning to new staff. I mean, that is another big benefit as well.
Yeah, Mitch,
ahead,
you also brought up another point, which I'll speak to also. Normally, the way the FDA through CBER operates is the expectation is that the clinical supplies and the process used to manufacture those clinical supplies will be tested in the clinic as they're doing now. And if one were to scale things up and in essence change the process, the standard practice is then we would be required to go in and repeat some of those clinical studies in man. By having this type of a facility where we could literally not scale up but scale out into 3 or 4 different manufacturing suites or locations, enables us to potentially utilize biochemical equivalence in our license process, and essentially then through the use of the biochemical comparability as noted by Sieber, would then allow us to avoid having to do additional clinical trials. So again, speed and cost would become big factors there.
Now, Barry, question for you. In your experience, and certainly trying to translate these vaccines to manufacturing scale, are there instances where you learn more after you've kind of quote unquote launched the product and have to make maybe alterations to your manufacturing process, which could influence the way that the existing facility was set up and built?
Yeah, so one of the missions we always had in tech ops for vaccines was to, in the future, look for, can we streamline processes? Can we modify processes post-approval, post-licensure, in order to make the vaccine less costly to manufacture, et cetera. And again, the ability then to, if we had to reconfigure some things or modify the process train, certainly is advantageous to us. And having a modular system enables a lot of that to be done. An actual example of, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
An actual example of that could be if one were doing upstream processing and originally had one seed train feeding one production bioreactor, and then we determined we could actually use the seed train to feed two, we could then add a module on to hold that second production bioreactor so that we could produce twice as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of the things that I think is, again, going to that speed of execution and the ability to quickly reconfigure a facility really lends itself very nicely to a modular wall panel system. And one of the things that I like to think of is what dictates the arrangement and configuration of your manufacturing facility. It's always the process, right? It's never the facility supersedes the process. And the thing that's very nice about a modular wall and clean room system is that it easily adapts and changes and morphs to meet the process needs that are required. And it may be something that's today, or it may be something that's tomorrow, but you always have that kind of ace up your sleeve where something can be reconfigured quickly to further enhance your process.
Yeah, this is Bob. I wanted to add or ask one more question as well. It seems a lot of the trend on the equipment lends itself to smaller modular systems rather than the old stick-built systems where, for instance, you had one great big fan and a ballroom, clean room. In the systems that you're designing, you have multiple fans and multiple distribution systems above the in the ceiling. So the modularity is actually an advantage, I think, and even the cost of these multiple fans, surprisingly enough, is less than one big fan. Would that be your experience as well?
It is. So again, going back to what I shared previously is the architectural design is obviously, from our perspective, influenced by the process. And with these smaller scale batches that are being required, it's shrinking the equipment, it's shrinking the rooms that are needed, and therefore your facility designs are also becoming much smaller. And then with the advent and a really rapid adoption and standardization of single-use and closed technology, not only does it further reduce the size of the facilities, but it also reduces other grade requirements for the rooms itself. So you have a lower HVAC burden, as you mentioned, Bob. You have less risk as it results to cross-contamination or containment concerns within the facility, which also are reflexive on size, HVAC requirements, maybe the quantity of airlocks that are required, and it makes a more adaptive, flexible nimble and smaller scale facility. And then even when we start, my background is on the fill finish equipment side, you're starting to get many manufacturers today that are making, equipment that is, I'll say, less fixed and more adaptive to a variety of container format processing options. They have the ability to produce maybe syringes and vials on the same production line. And so you sacrifice efficiency of mass scale production for adaptability for smaller batches, which is exactly where the industry is going for cell and gene therapy type applications. But for mass scale vaccine production, that's where we see maybe more of your larger ballroom design configurations, especially for these very large high output filling lines, where they'll put 2 or 3 filling lines in one production ballroom to mass produce one given product. Certainly a lot of SOPs and documentation and procedural things that have to be taken into account to make sure you don't have any type of product mix up on those lines. But to your point, we definitely see an overall trend going towards smaller, more adaptive, nimble facilities than the larger open ballroom type concepts.
And I think it's worthy to develop a little bit in terms of the word flexibility and what we mean by that. In terms of engineering and construction, we're talking about the engineering portion of it. The materials construction are fit for purpose, they're fit for the industry, they're not particle shedding generally in terms of how they're fabricated and put together. But developing a little bit more on the construction portion of the flexibility term. As the facility changes, a problem that happens in terms of the amount of dust that's generated from a lot of conventional or traditional type material uses, mostly drywall, which can be very cost effective up front. But when that happens and starts modifying the facility, the particle generation, as we've all experienced, whether it be in our homes or one of these projects, proliferates everywhere. And that's a nightmare for an existing facility through an intake on an air handler. You just don't want it. So that flexibility in terms of the material, not only from its unit Lego quote unquote type approach, but also from modifying the facility of removing unit pieces and modifying rooms, but also from a material and a cleanliness type maintenance and reduction in making those modifications to the facility. It's much more straightforward to requalify the areas as they come back up and the modification has been made. So I just want to kind of stress that point.
The other thing, Mitch, that I think may be worthwhile mentioning is also a lot of the materials for COVID are being manufactured by CDMO organizations or CMO organizations. And when one looks at the business they're in, time for changeovers in between potential products is very important. And in fact, that's why they've gone to a lot of the single-use type of equipment. So if you think about the filling line, one of the big things previously was after we utilized that filling line, we had to do an extensive cleanup, often done with a clean-in-place system, etc. And it could take us a fair amount of time to turn that room over. However, if we were using single-use equipment, we could do far more production campaigns in the same period of time, especially if different products had to be manufactured within the same room. So again, having the ability then to put different process trains within this modularized clean room system could be very advantageous to us from a productivity standpoint.
Absolutely agree.
So we've already touched on, really, I think in this conversation, many of the advantages of modular execution. But I think there's really 4 pillars that really are the focal point, not only of AES and our modular system, but really I think for every pharmaceutical company that is looking to produce products, right? The key is that ultimately these products and these facilities have to be in compliance with CGMP requirements wherever they go globally. Everybody's looking for a lower, better net present overall value, quick return on investment. And so really to deliver on that and also deliver these products to clients, schedule becomes increasingly critical. And then, Mitch, you articulated flexibility very well in your prior comments, so I won't belabor that, but really, how do we get from point A to point B as quickly and efficiently as possible, and really be able to add on or bolt on new and important capabilities and features to that facility long term. So really capitalize on that investment over the long haul. And then lastly, how can we make the products better and faster? So we definitely have a focus at AES with our wall panel construction on durability, longevity, so that you don't want your plant shutting down. I tell people everybody focuses a lot on process equipment, right? Because it's what touches their product. But the one thing that I think oftentimes doesn't get its due credit, but unless something's wrong with it, is the room that they're in to produce these products, the clean room, right? It renders everything that you are doing in those clean room suites ineffective. You're unable to do it if the clean room is not operating as intended, right? It is the most critical piece of infrastructure, in my opinion, in an entire pharmaceutical facility. So when we take that in mind, right, a architectural system or the Faciliflex approach that AES offers, in our viewpoint of a clean room, is that it's an integrated offering, an integrated solution, right? So it's a combination of both the architectural envelope and the mechanical system that get integrated together, right? So I look at the architectural system as the body, right, and the mechanical system as the soul. It really provides the temperature, cleanliness, containment requirements, the humidity and pressurization. And when AES provides that integrated solution, right, it eliminates a tremendous amount of risk from the client that is engaged with us for this project, because AES is willing to stand behind and guarantee performance of those respective elements as are required for the application. So we take that one step further. AES is offering 3 different models of our Faciliflex Express design. And so we have what I'll call a smaller version, which we call our 5K, which is approximately a 5,000 square foot facility that takes us from time of purchase order to time of handing the keys over the facility for final validation and qualification, 6 months. 15K, which is right around 15,000 square feet of clean room space, 8 months. And then our largest offering is our 30K, which is 30,000 square feet of manufacturing space, where we can deliver that from start to finish in 10 months, okay? And then when you look at the amount of flexibility that these really offer, you can go from one to multiple processes. And you see within the 15K, it also has a tremendous amount of room for expansion in that area. And then with the 30K, also has the ability, basically a mirror line to the left or to the right, and be able to add a second process to that particular facility design very, very quickly and efficiently.
Josh,
Mitch,
let me ask.
I think it's worth pointing out that these are all developed. These aren't theoretical exercises. These are empirical exercises that were generated from data, proven data of past projects. So these are typical layouts. That doesn't mean a particular process or client would be perfectly fit into this, but it's pretty close, in which we've done a lot of the engineering from the previous slide that Josh had showed on the HVAC. We can back up the performance of these rather than a custom design, which is the traditional way in which the air handlers have to be installed and the rooms have to be started up before the commissioning and qualification can even begin. The reason that we can support and back that up is because these are fairly fixed designs in their performance. We know within a few percentage points of how they're going to engineering spec-wise perform. So we think that we know that we can come up much faster, and that the commissioning qualification documentation can start much earlier in the process and be completed very quickly post completion of the installation of our units.
So a couple of questions I had, Josh, maybe you and Mitch can speak to that. One is it fair to say then that a lot of the facility engineering work would not have to be done for these, or much simpler? And second, if I ordered 3 of the Express 30s, what would the timeline be to deliver 3 of them?
All great questions, Barry. So I'm going to start with your latter question first, and then I'll progress to your first. So if I forget along the way, please refresh my memory. But yeah, it's an excellent question. So for each one of these designs, we are able to, I tell people it's not a serial operation. So if you bought 3, it's done in parallel. We're able to basically go straight to permitting for those particular designs, right? Let's say, for example, you wanted 3 5K facilities dotted in 3 places in the US. The expected delivery outcome for each of those options would be, right, not 18 months, doing one after another. They'd be done in parallel, assuming you have, the plot of land selected, maybe the shell building is already there, and we're basically ready to show up on site, understand site conditions very early on, and then we can move straight to getting the code officials involved in those localities and get their input, get the permits, and move right into manufacturing and installation of the clean room. As it relates to the state of design, so to speak, and what is considered, let's say, more or less complete, there's a couple of things that are important to know as it relates to site conditions that will influence some of the design. For example, if we were to build one of these facilities in California, there's obviously certain seismic steel design considerations that have to be done, and those are specific to site. So we may have to make some additional alterations to schedule to basically incorporate the seismic steel requirements that will support the clean room ceiling. In addition to what is maybe perhaps the facility has a seal that we can support our clean rooms from. Another question that has to be considered is, where's the air handling equipment going to be located? Are we building a structural mezzanine within to support that? Can we put the HVAC equipment maybe out on the ground within the facility? Is it a rooftop unit or some sort of exterior unit? So there's a number of different site condition factors that we have to take into account. With that being said, even with those site conditions, being developed and determined when we show up on site, we strive very, very hard to get that done within the window. Each of these offerings guarantee. Any other questions? Barry, did I answer the questions you asked?
No, I think you did. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mitch, I know you and your team really spent a lot of time looking at a variety of facility options when we were looking to develop these standard offerings, right? And we looked at, the beauty is that AES will probably design and build more modular clean rooms than anybody else in North America. And so we see a lot of things, a lot of trends in terms of clean room designs that people are throwing at us every day. What kind of set these 3 designs apart that drove us to more or less standardize on these configurations?
One of the key things that you had mentioned before is the use of single-use technologies. One of the benefits of these designs is that we don't require that it's not designed into them any of the ancillary functions in terms of large water systems and depyrogenization of sterilization of components. things of that nature that are required of mostly classical biologics, which is very high processing, 200,000 plus vial batches. These are smaller batches of cell and gene therapy that are yielding, hundreds, if not thousands of vials. And so that induces, between single-use technologies and pre-sterilized components, a lot more flexibility into the design. So that was probably one of the first key aspects of these particular designs. But other than that, we took those configurations and put them into certain types of geometries that we saw patterns of, and that's what you're seeing here in terms of how they're running the standard operations on a low production, and to a great extent, semi-manual type process until some of the automation kind of comes in. And to Barry's earlier point, whether you scale up or scale out, these types of designs can do either of those in terms of how the expansion would be done. Obviously, scaling out, you would just be replicating the unit type of rooms that have been designed here, versus scaling up, you might expand a particular room. But what we did do with the designs, to the best of our ability, at least the larger ones, the 15, especially the 30, was to kind of congregate and consolidate the key ancillary type areas that we needed, the gownings and the formulations and the storage, to more one side of the building, so that as the designs expanded, they would simply add more rooms with the support on one side to minimize disruption. We know that there's going to be tech transfer and new processes and products that come into the facility, so they were intended to minimize that disruption in terms of doing, which of course you have to submit with your licensing, when you have to notify the FDA, and you want that as least complicated as possible, not only for the operation, but from a filing perspective as well. And that was thought of as much as possible in these designs.
Yeah, one of the things too that I thought you and your team did a really good job on is really understanding the business side of these customers as well, right? There's the technology, there's the process side, but with a lot of our clients that we're working with, one is, is this going to work, right? Am I, at the end of the day, going to be able to have a facility that is going to meet the rigors of GMP, and the FDA or the EU will buy off on? And in every one of these circumstances, we have these layouts deployed in the field, and the FDA has uniformly approved the plant operations for these facilities. And so, one, they have basically an assurance that the design is compliant, number one, both in terms of materials, layout, flows of people and materials throughout the facility. And so that's a huge driver right there. And number two, the control of costs, right, and budget. So to be able to buy a facility or standard layout with a known fixed cost and schedule eliminates a lot of worry for a lot of CEOs, right? They know, hey, I need to deliver a product here at this date. I need to know that it can get done, and I need to know that the costs aren't going to escalate from what I was originally told of my budget, because my budget is fixed. I can't go back to the investors and get more money. And so being able to have a solution that answers those key questions, I think is really going to be helpful to facility planners, CEOs, and executives alike, trying to understand what the future of their manufacturing capabilities will look like. It really eliminates that risk.
Yeah, Josh, you bring up a really good point that should be developed on in terms of that, in terms of what these offer is an upfront capital estimate, a good estimate with each one of these. Having lived all of my career, my 30 years in the industry on the client side, and with the last almost 9 months now with AES, I get to sit down and instill that experience, and that has that in these designs. But you raise a very good point. One of the things that we wanted as a client when I was on that side is I need to have a number. I'm going to, through capital appropriations, I need to have an idea of that number, and not just the back of a napkin. These represent much more than the back of a napkin. They represent a good estimate, not only in terms of project durations, but also in terms of cost, that you can go to your capital appropriations with and pass the red face test, as we call it, with the executive team when you're pitching that. The worst thing that can happen in a capital project for anybody is when they have to go back and say, I missed it by 30%. And it's usually rationalized because you had very little information. But when we go through these, we vet these very clearly with the client of what these represent and what they may not represent in terms of fitting them for the leveraging the opportunities of them. But having those numbers up front in terms of the budget number is a big aspect of these that we offer. Where can you sit down and say, here's the size, here's what it is, and here's how much it costs. Most of the time you have to go through an elaborate conceptual design process that takes months and money before you can arrive at that and then go back to your executive committee and give that money. So that's a big opportunity for this type of approach as well.
I had one question relative to the useful standardization as you move from the 5K up through the 15K and 30. And assuming that you have a small batch pilot unit that's successful, and then you move on to the 15K or 30K for the actual production, is there a benefit in the experience that you've had with the design at 5K that you then can apply for the production units?
It would be in the terms of the scaling process, but not necessarily relative to the processes. It really depends on the unit operations of the process. I've yet to find anything that's identical between processes. There are definitely similarities. It's how much they use single-use technologies, and as well as what the procedures are set up. Like larger companies like the Mercks, the Pfizers, the Amgens, they have their standard processes in which there's many ways to do something, and they have a particular way in how they want to move and do their unit operations. So you have to adjust to those. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't leverage that understanding of those between each other. But they're not necessarily replicates in terms of the 5, 15, and 30 in themselves.
You know, one of the other things that Mitch had mentioned, which I think is important, is, as an example, one is that the trend is to go to smaller facilities, perhaps with less capacity. But even that now, with a lot of the single-use bioreactors and a lot of the new technologies, has changed. Where before, to make a therapeutic protein, perhaps we would get a yield of 1 to 2 grams per liter, where today it could be 8 to 10 grams per liter. So when you have those productivity improvements, what 15 years ago or 10 years ago was a pilot scale can now be used for commercial. So I think that's one thing which is very important. The other is, he mentioned on the Express 30K that they kind of have certain aspects of it, like the gowning rooms and certain utilities areas, perhaps, which could be leveraged. So if I did need additional space, I could add on to that 30K with an additional module, but not have to necessarily also add on another gowning room, etc. And I could just leverage that, again, for a potential cost savings and time. And also, Mitch had mentioned, when one has to increase the size of a facility, we're always apprehensive that if I need to continue manufacturing operations, that my construction won't jeopardize the current production facility. And again, this would enable reducing that risk considerably.
Great. I'm going to skip ahead a couple slides just because I want to keep track of time here. It's been a really great conversation. So really quick, I just wanted to circle back, Barry, with one of your questions as it related to design and basically timelines. And you can see here that the overall time schedule for the upfront effort is really the same. And we have a small window of time in which we can basically handle and address the site-specific design requirements or modifications that might be necessary for the uniqueness of the application and the installation location. Go to the township for permitting, get those permits while we are procuring and manufacturing the respective components, all the while the client is getting the building ready for the installation. And then really the change really comes down to, obviously a smaller building is going to have a shorter duration of building readiness. And you will, because of the amount of square footage of clean room that you're installing and the amount of equipment, and obviously the install goes a bit quicker than the 15K and 30K would. But this gives you a real good understanding of how the schedule scales relative to the square foot requirements for the facility design. This is just a real quick illustration as it relates to the scope of work that comes with the integrated package. I'm really not going to touch too much on this in particular, but it's really an all-inclusive package. It's buying the refrigerator, so to speak, with the refrigeration package on it. It's not the architectural envelope, but a completely integrated living and breathing clean room system.
So Josh, go back to that one slide again if you could.
Sure.
I think it's worthy to sit there and develop, and the fact I think we've all experienced, Barry, yourself, in terms of what this does. It minimizes the transition points between a project when one company owns the full responsibility. And AES is unique in not only the specification and the compliance aspect of these rooms, but also in terms of the transitions between different trades and dealing with the main project team as a potential alteration or something like that may happen. But my point being is the real advantage of this is that the mechanical system design, its installation, the room design, all of that is in a central bounded project scope, making one company involved. The key is making sure that company is well qualified and capable of maintaining those schedules and has the experience. So that's something that you're looking at here in this particular slide that gives you a good visual that these types of approaches would own all of that install, the documentation. We even have a commissioning and qualification package that goes on with that because we have those vendors and we get those documentation. So we assemble the package and hand it off to the client. And much of that work is already done. Obviously you can't complete commissioning or qualification until the units are installed, but we're able to hand it off to the client who can go ahead and download it into their Maximo, into their CMMS system, in which they can start qualifying that equipment and the process, so minimizing that speed.
Yeah, Mitch, and I think there's a couple other things that kind of jogged my memory a little bit looking at this drawing too. And that is a lot of the people today, a lot of the contract manufacturing organizations, et cetera, or people that are new to manufacturing are kind of looking for a turnkey type system. And this kind of does provide that very nicely. The other is the biggest nightmare with a lot of clean rooms is having to do the maintenance on them and having people enter into those clean spaces and potentially then require cleanup after completion, maybe even requalification of certain aspects of the room. And this type of an installation allows the vast majority of maintenance to be done without having anyone enter that clean space directly. And I think, again, that's a big advantage today.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and that's actually the huge difference between working with someone who is a design build contractor versus somebody that just comes in to assemble the clean room walls and then, dust their hands off and off they go, right? It's someone else's problem to deal with. Where AES, we own the clean room. We own every aspect of ensuring that the clean room that we designed and delivered can be commissioned and operated in a efficient GMP manner, right? And that's what Mitch's team's focuses on, is ensuring that the flows of people and materials and waste and product throughout the facility are done efficiently, and then the architectural system and mechanical systems are sufficient to ensure that they provide a long-lasting, very durable manufacturing environment for the client to be able to produce, their critical products over the long haul. And that's the beauty of it. And then you touched on, just on the maintenance side, obviously our key is to design things as maintenance-free as certainly possible, but AES also has an aftermarket group that is focused on basically providing a performance assurance of the facility. So coming in and doing regular inspections and checkup, making sure that it is continually operating the same it was the day we left, right? Qualified to commission the facility. We want to make sure that we support our clients long term with that asset. And so we have a dedicated group of individuals that day in and day out just live and breathe supporting facility operations and maintenance folks with all of AES's clean rooms.
Yeah, that seems like you have back on that. Just one more second on that drawing again. You have multiple ducts into your ceiling HEPA modules. Do you not? How many? How much CFM do you normally put in, and how many HEPA modules are there per duct? Because I've seen some of the designs where you have multiple ducts going into the ceiling.
Yeah, I'll actually bring up a different diagram. It kind of showcases one of AES's capabilities. This is BIM, right? We can literally design the facility in 3D, and you can see kind of the complexity of ductwork. But even with these standard designs, we've worked to optimize our trunk runs and our HVAC distribution to the respective suites for each room. And so, Bob, it's a little bit challenging to answer your question directly, because part of what our team does is they're working with the client to understand what the temperature load is. So sometimes respective rooms are driven by heat load, right? So we're looking at how do we keep the sensible heat within the room at a comfortable level for people interacting with it. So for example, we have a number of biosafety cabinets, maybe perhaps some incubators that will put off some heat. And so that could moderate or adjust the amount of CFM that we're providing per room. And then also the grade classification of each space also influences how much CFM and the number of HEPA fan modules that we're including in each space.
I see.
Those are some of the design considerations that go into how we lay out our HEPA filters and the amount of HVAC in terms of airflow and supply that we provide to each space.
But just without belaboring that point, is that there is an advantage then, because you have these modular, sub-modular designs of these that we were just showing here, of these HEPA filter modules, that whether you have the 5K or 15K or whatever, you probably have pretty much standard modules there, and there seems to be some advantage from a maintenance standpoint and of a facility having moving from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, but using some of the same technology.
Absolutely, and that's a great point, because there is commonality between components between the 5K, 15K, and 30K. So there's not, let's say, a learning or performance curve that has to be overcome from one facility design to another as you scale up. You're right, you have a commonality of components and technologies that are being used. So there's not a need to become more familiar with something different every time you go from one option to another. Great point. And that's actually part of the reason why we're able to deliver these facilities so rapidly, because there is standards in the components. And then also one of the things that our architectural designers did is how can we optimize each layout in space with the low wall returns, maybe the number of panels that we have to produce at the factory, right? So that has two tangible effects. One, we can reduce the amount of panels or panel sizes that the factory has to produce. So I want to say, well, why does that matter? Well, you know, you have equipment that has to produce these components and panels. It's less changeover, right? It's very similar to, you know, the analogy to a filling line, right? If I'm going from one product to the next, you know, Barry was talking about the cleaning and the room setup. It's very similar at our factory. We have to change to different dies, different setups for one panel size versus another. So if we can minimize those types of setups in the factory, we can get gain a lot of efficiencies in the factory, get the panels produced quicker, ship them to the site faster. We can carry more inventory because there's less variability on the panel sizes that we're building. So it allows us to reduce costs quite substantially for each facility, but also be able to produce those panels much, much quicker and get them into the field so we can begin construction quicker. All right. So that's really the key. Okay. Really, just to you know, keeping time here. This is a good example of what the 5K looks like. You can see that beyond the materials and process flows, our technology team has really looked at what types of technologies are commonly used in these type of smaller scale settings. So with the 5K, you can see here, you have 3 processing suites that are set up with biosafety cabinets, benches, and other equipment to make sure that it's right size for the scale of process and the number of people that are interacting and operating within these spaces. It really aligns well with accelerated drug product development, you know, your orphan drug type candidates, your breakthrough drugs, cell and gene therapy products. So it's really a nimble and adaptive design. And if we need to scale or build out additional processing areas, we can actually continue the corridor and build additional processing suites going further south in this 3D model. And it's very nice and nimble.
Hey, Josh, I'd like to develop on a point right here on the third to last bullet. In terms of aligning with the accelerated development programs, it's a requirement. One of the key aspects of the agency is the continuation of the continuity of supply. So these aggressive breakthrough or type programs are trying to tackle a very difficult supply situation as well as the drug situation. So as part of their program, they do have a design review program. And because these standard designs are kind of fixed, they're ready to submit content to them, to the agency, to give them comfort and assurance in their application. Not only does your molecule need to be efficacious, whatever design and model that you use, but also the supply of product through your validation and your supply approach needs to be demonstrated through some mechanism. And this is also a very key aspect. So this can substantiate that for clients in terms of their supply models and being able to do that. Many companies just say, I'm going to a contract manufacturer, and they get that data from them in terms of their layouts and say, okay, that's great. Other ones want to take that much more over their control simply because they can control the quality of the product. They're experts on the process, a process which is not necessarily fixed. Remember, many of these are just on the verge of being validated. There's all kinds of opportunities to improve yield, scale, supply. So they need to have it as close as possible. And to be able to do that, they need to assure the agency that these designs and their supply model is going to be robust enough for them to own it. So that's something that needs to be understood, as well as the benefits of something more known up front than down the line as far as design and engineering construction.
Yeah, great point, Mitch. Great point. Now, as we look at the 15K, basically, really the layout has your processing suites kind of central to the corridor and the locker rooms and material entry points into the cleanroom facility. Here we're showing fill finish suite, fermentation and purification for these respective applications. So it provides a really nice unidirectional personnel and material flow through the facility, and really has the ability to scale and bolt on additional capabilities, size, and infrastructure if needed for the client over the long haul. And then lastly, with the Faciliflex Express 30K, it's really an all-encompassing commercial manufacturing scale facility. So you see here very large single-use bioreactors, bioreactor trains, so very much a large-scale commercial cell and gene therapy type, allogeneic type application, or even biologic type facility for maybe perhaps monoclonal antibody products and technologies. Yeah, again, designed for single-use technology, and is really designed for the commercial scale. And 3 process suites are shown, but as I mentioned earlier in my discussion, has a very easy ability to double, if not triple, the size and scale of this facility based upon the client's needs and the layout. That's really the inherent beauty of the way that Mitch's technology team has laid this out, is that although it's certainly substantial in size for a commercial drug product, if they want to make a multi-use facility, it's very easy to enhance the design to accommodate additional bioreactor trains for commercial scale with this design. Mitch, anything you wanted to add as it relates to the 30K?
No, not at this point in time. I think you covered that well.
Okay, great. Well, certainly, Bob, Barry, really appreciate the conversation here. Is there any other questions or thoughts that you had as it relates to Faciliflex Express and how it might be further leveraged in industry, given your insights?
I think I'd put something else out there. One of the things which has always been kind of a bottleneck where one has to have multiple facilities is, in the past, we've always been required to do clinical trials if we have another site manufacturing a product to show it's the same. But there is a mechanism now called Biochemical Equivalence, whereby one can show that through a battery of analytical assays that the material produced in Factory A in Alabama versus Factory B in Pennsylvania is the same. And it carries the nomenclature of biochemical comparability. And that has been used successfully and avoided potentially time-consuming clinical trials, as well as obviously the cost of running those trials. And again, having the ability to have a facility which is the same, with the same process train being run, enables that type of strategy. So again, very important, especially with a COVID, where multiple facilities will be required.
I think it's been a very instructive, useful discussion for me, and I'm sure it will be for many of the people in the industry. And I'd like to thank the AES people for such a good discussion today, and hope we can do this again in the future. So thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you as well to Bob and the Mcllvaine Company. Really so much appreciate you sponsoring and putting this on for us.
Let's do it again. Bye now.
Take care.
Let's do it. Bye.